Welcome, everybody. This is Seth Morton. I'm moderator of the Representative Town Meeting, and I'm going to call to order the annual budget meeting of the Darien Representative Town Meeting. First item is acceptance of the agenda. Without objection, I will accept the agenda as published. Are there any objections? Do you see any, Kate?
Just give me 1 second. Okay, if anybody has an objection, please raise your hand. There's a hand raised, but I'm not finding it. That would be Jack. Okay, you're good, Seth.
Okay. The agenda is accepted. Next, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 19 meeting of the RTM?
Clara Sartori.
And can I have a second, please?
Marcy Minnick.
Wonderful. Are there any corrections, additions?
I see no hands. Would you like me to send a poll?
Well, if you don't see any, that's probably all right. We've got a long night. Somebody could bring it up later, but I'll wait just a second here. You'll take another quick look and see if.
Yeah, I see no objections, but do you want me to send the question out to vote?
Do you have it all ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Wonderful.
It's been a minute. I've closed the poll. And your motion passes.
Oh, that's great. The minutes of April 19 stand approved. Just a couple of quick announcements. First, I have to thank Mac Patrick for this one. He's the chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee. It's a reminder to lock your cars. Cars are being stolen because people leave the keys in the car. I had one stolen off my street, and it's a real situation, so please remember to do that. Second announcement is that the Board of Selectmen has formed a committee. It's called the IT Steering and Governance Advisory Committee to overlook technology within the town. And the RTM has been asked to provide a member. So what we'll do is we'll handle it somewhat like the voting on the Board of Ethics. We'll send out a nomination form to everybody, and then ask you to return the nominations to the town clerk by June 3rd. And then it will be, they'll be evaluated a little bit by the Technology Committee of the Rules Committee and passed on to the Rules Committee to bring forward to you on the June 21st meeting of the RTM. So that's my only announcements. The first item on the agenda is 21-10, consideration and action on a special appropriation of $2,785,630 from the unassigned fund balance to the capital fund. On behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis, Chair.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3 and Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 2110, consideration and action on a special appropriation of $2,785,630 from the unassigned fund balance to the capital fund, better known as the Reserve Fund for Capital Non-Recurring Expenditures. Is there a second?
You have a second, Jenny Schwartz.
If there's no objections, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. This resolution needs to be approved prior to the discussion of the budget, or the budget will not balance. These additional funds, once added to the Reserve Fund for Capital Non-Recurring Expenditures, will be used to fund the fiscal year 22 capital projects. It's important to review unassigned fund balance to understand how and why these funds are available, as well as what is the policy uses for unassigned fund balances. First, let's go for some of the key parts of the policy associated with fund balances. The Board of Finance states that they should not be excessive. Minimal assigned fund balance should be maintained at not less than 12% of budgetary general fund revenues, and its uses should be reserved for special or unanticipated expenses, special or unanticipated capital, or refunding of debt. There are 4 classifications of fund balance that are important to know. Restricted, when there are legal constraints, either externally imposed by creditors, grantors, contributors, or legal others. This usually represents trust funds or grant funds. Committed, that portion of the fund's balance that has been set aside for a specific purpose by the highest level of the entity, and in the case of Darien, that's the RTM. An example is the $100,000 committed fund balance in the general fund that is set aside for special ed needs. Assigned, intended to be a specific purpose, but not restricted or committed. Those are typically encumbered funds. And unassigned, not in the other classifications and where all other residual spending amounts end up. We'll be adding to the last one, undecided. We'll be addressing the last one, the unassigned balance. Per the policy, the RTM should be very cognizant that unassigned fund balance should not be used for a reduction of ordinary or known operating expenditures. Such use is frowned upon by the rating agencies. Therefore, when we move forward on budgets, it's important that expenses and revenues are properly budgeted, as getting the monies back out for our taxpayers has some limitations. Essentially, unassigned fund balances are not an ATM for known but unbudgeted expenses nor recurring expenses. And it should be noted that any Board of Finance action or use of unassigned fund balances requires RTM approval. As you will hear me mention throughout the budget discussions, this year is an anomaly. To review the current year's assigned fund balance is consistent with that statement. The year started with a fund balance of $25,527,415, representing 73% of total fiscal year 20. Kate, are you able to put up the chart on fund balance?
Yes.
Thank you. 2 appropriations were approved this year by the Board of Finance, a special appropriation of approximately $1.8 to cover the Board of Ed COVID expenses, and the purchase of concession equipment for both Weed and Pear Tree Beaches, totaling $9.2 subsequent balance is 23,730,000 and change, or 16% of total revenues. Board of Finance reviews this balance every month. Every year during budget deliberations, the Board of Finance projects year-end contributions to fund balance. This was an unusually high, with a projection of $3.4 million being added at the close of the year. This discussion also is a reflection of the overall expected financial results as of now for the fiscal year. Revenue surplus from the associated town operations are anticipated to be 1.6 million. Town operating budget surplus is about 800,000, and Board of Ed operating budget surplus approximately $1 million. The projected revenue surplus is comprised of 4 basic areas. Tax collections are up $740,000, mostly based on a Great Recession rate versus consistent rate from prior years used when calculating the current year's budget. Park and Rec revenues are projected to be $650,000. Kudos to Park and Rec for a blowout year. It's an all-time high and 215% greater than 2019 revenues. Town clerk revenues are up approximately $1 million based upon the housing and refinancing bill projected boom that has been occurring in town. And state and federal COVID grants on the town side received approximately $360,000. The above is slightly offset by some downsides. Building fees and fire marshal inspections associated with the new projects are down $480,000 and $110,000 respectively. Parking revenue, as you might expect, would be down. It's $74,000. Youth services is down $144,000. Solid tipping waste fees are down $188,000. Sewer assessments down approximately $109,000. The projected $800,000 return of funds from the town side operating includes the following budgetary drivers. As one would expect, the health department is over budget by about $40,000. Police department is down about $330,000, primarily due to lower overtime and vacancies. Park and Rec is up about $250,000 to deliver the $650,000 that I just talked about, but also we will be addressing this item, the $250,000, in our June meeting. Youth services are down about $148,000. Senior center and related services are down. Unused contingency counts are down between 150 to 200, and other departments are under budget by about 260,000. As for the Board of Ed, the projected amount in excess of budget is $1 million, primarily due to the budgeted ECR of $375,000, because the state reimbursement rate is at pretty high for a number of years at 80%. Primarily because many towns have not submitted the budget amounts. This is a pool, and so we're getting a larger share of it. Do not expect that share next year. And projected use of the SO2 grant of about $590,000. Again, remember these are projections for the current year and closeout. I expect the surplus revenue might increase even more, and that might be offset by a reduction in the expected $1 million assigned to the Board of Ed as of March 30th, and whether or not we will be receiving that. I want to thank you for listening essentially to the 21 year-end review. These are anticipated year-end contributions to the assigned fund balance. The percentage would be 18.39% of 21 revenues. As part of the Board of Finance budgetary process, the board determined to return $2,785,630 of already taxed dollars to our taxpayers by a transfer to the Reserve Fund for Capital Non-Recurring Expenses for the purposes of offsetting part of the requested fiscal year 22 approved Board of Finance capital budget that is not being bonded. This will result in an anticipated unassigned fund balance of approximately 16% to start the fiscal year 22, well within the 12% assigned balance, and will give us an excess of approximately $6 million, which means that we're in very strong position. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee met on May 5th with 14 of 17 members present and voted unanimously in favor of this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any other committees who would like to speak on this?
Please raise your hand if you wanted to speak on this. I'm seeing no hands raised, Seth.
Okay, town officials?
Cecil, did we have any town officials who wanted to speak?
Sorry, I was muted. I haven't seen anybody so far. We are having a lot of folks who would really like to see the charts, though.
I apologize. I did not realize that I had the polling questions still open. Let's see. I believe you should be seeing the chart now. Yep.
Nice chart.
Sorry, Jack.
That's not a problem. We'll keep going. Are we ready to vote?
Well, we're going to ask if anybody on the floor of the RTM has
Yes, Clara Sartori.
All right,
okay.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say.
Okay.
Great, then we're ready to vote.
Okay. This is 21-10.
Yes.
Okay, the minute your motion carries.
That's great. Next item is broadly 2111, but it has a lot of sections to it. We're going to start off with the reserve fund for capital and non-recurring expenditures. And there's going to be an amendment on this. So what I'll do is I'm going to have Jack Davis start off because F&B is primary, and then we'll have Public Works report, Park and Rec report, and Education report, and then any other committees. And then I'm going to introduce Stacy TA, who has an amendment. She's on Finance and Budget. And she's going to give the majority report on the amendment, and then I'll recognize Jack. Jack will report on the minority opinion on the amendment, and then we'll proceed from there. Then I can have members, elected officials talk, any other committees talk on the amendment, and also RTM members from the floor speak on the amendment, and we'll vote on that, and then we'll have a vote on the motion as amended or not amended, and then we can also open the floor for further discussion on the final amendment as it appears. I hope you all understand that. but it just seems to be the most efficient way to do this. So without further ado, I recognize Jack Davis, Finance and Budget Committee, for the appropriation from the reserve fund for capital and non-recurring expenditures.
I'm Jack Davis. I'm going to give an overview of the budget first. I'm from District 3 and chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. This is the second year of addressing the town's budget and related matters virtually. It's saving me about 1,000 steps up and down to the podium, and it saves you guys a lot of looking at me. So it's been a win-win for both of us. The current year budget is an anomaly year. Last year, capital and expenses were deferred, the tax collection rate was lowered to one of the Great Recession, and the early retirement of bonds in fiscal year 20, saving the town interest expense and achieving a reduction in the mill rate all throw year-to-year comparisons out of kilter. A big fan of Emily Chang on Bloomberg Technology, watching the recent show planted the seed on how F&B will compare and present this year's budget. Listening to the CEO of Bank of America compare current year's results to 2019, why not have the town's fiscal budget viewed in the same light? As such, I'll be presenting not only year-to-year comparisons, but where appropriate, there will be a 2-year compound annual growth comparison as well. I believe this gives a better picture of the budgets before us. A focus on the amounts requested will also be compared. This is the area that our boards control, as the denominator to the mill rate is driven by the market. That's the grand list. We don't control that. The F&B committee reports will focus on high level overall throughout the budgets. Each of the other RTM committees will provide capital and then operating reports on their respective areas of expertise and responsibility. I would be remiss if I failed to mention that this is Jay-Z's, that's John Zagroski for those who don't know, last budget as a member of the Board of Finance. We often agreed on approaches. There were times we didn't, but it was always handled in a professional manner. Jay-Z worked with F&B to create the buddy system, and whilst there's always a few bumps along the road, I hope this joint effort will continue between the Board of Finance and the RTM in the future. One of Jay-Z's statements and one of his legacies that always stays in my mind as a member of the RTM Finance and Budget is that any new FTE costs $7.5 million over the life of that employee. Yet Jay-Z would say that the town often spends more time discussing smaller budgetary items rather than addition of a new FTE. This year, as will be discussed later, there are 2 significant FTE additions in the budget. The 3rd shift of civilian dispatch and the move of 5 elementary school SES positions to 5 elementary school assistant principals. I would also be remiss that when we address the public works contract and we vote not to reject, in there is a change in the pension, and hopefully that change over time will reduce that cost from the 7.5 million to at least maybe 7. But I wanted to go back to the FTEs. From the 9 years of its original concept, and after 3 different police chiefs, 2 shifts in place, and the deferral of the civilian dispatch 3rd shift last year, I can honestly say the addition of the civilian dispatch 3 FTEs have been positively, absolutely, undeniably, and reliably, not just merely, mostly sincerely vetted. The increase in the SES positions to administrations have also been fully discussed and explained at numerous Board of Ed, as well as RTM education and F&B meetings, and is supported. The total budget is $152,724,330, up $5,180,261, or 3.51 from the prior year. However, the 2-year compound annual growth for the total budget comparing fiscal year 20 to the proposed fiscal year 22 represents only a 1.63% increase. Total requested budgets adjusted for the proposed bonding of 1.9 million, netting town revenues of 8.9 million, transfers from unassigned fund balance of approximately 2.8, which we just passed, usage of $1 million from the reserve fund for capital reserve, and a cut in the public works vehicle approval is 149,503,852, up 9 million, or approximately 3.43%. That's a big increase. The 2-year compound annual growth rate, however, is only a 3.4% increase when compared to the 20 adjusted budgets. This year, no capital appropriation will be included in the amount needed to be raised through taxes. Resolutions 2113, 2114, and 2115 propose to bond 1.9 million. As will be discussed in 2111A, transferred from the unassigned fund balance we just approved in 2110, the use of the reserve fund for capital reserve, and the reserve revenues will zero out the need to tax for proposed capital projects. Some additional drivers to this year's budget include significant pension increases of over 55%. This is attributable to a lower than expected return in the pension plan and the final year of a pension accrual adjustment. The increased pension cost affects Board of Selectmen, library staff, and certain Board of Ed employee pension. Another driver is the prior year's early retirement of debt, which has the debt service appearing to increase by 14%. However, if you look at the planned debt service, has actually decreased by 3.4% based upon the 2-year average. Total debt outstanding for this year will be 62 million and 54.6 million at the end of fiscal 22. As of March 30th, there was approximately 43 million of authorized but unissued debt not reflected in those numbers. The largest portion being the Oxbridge bonding authorization with about 39 million, and if you recall, in October 2020, a bond authorization from the Sewer Authority for 2.3 million. The grand list grew from 8,568,000,000 to 8,629,000,000, or about 70%. The 2-year growth rate from fiscal years 28,473,000,000 to the fiscal year 22 was actually up 92 basis points. A 1% increase over the last 2 years is pretty good. As Seth has mentioned, 2111 has 7 parts. Approval of the capital projects, approval of the Board of Selectmen budget, including their operating expense, library grants, and transfers of capital and debt funds. Approval of the Board of Ed operating budget. Item D, approval of the total appropriations, which shows that we know how to add C and D together. Approval of the mill rate, and approval of 5 million in tax anticipation notes if required, and finally the transfer to other funds. F and B voted on each of these separately. One amendment was made. We will address that at the end of the 2111. With that, I move Section A of the RTM Resolution 2111, appropriation in the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures. Do I have a second?
Lisa Yarnell.
Resolved that an appropriation of $3,279,023 is hereby made from the reserve fund for capital and non-recurring expenditures for the purpose of meeting expenses of the town of Darien as shown by the budget this day approved. All of the capital projects approved in this budget reside in this fund, the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures. The Board of Selectmen operating budget capital line is a mere transfer to this fund. That is why we need to address and approve this capital item prior to the next resolution. The capital projects are transferred to this fund, which is controlled by the Board of Finance. If a project is under budget, the unused amounts appropriated are transferred to the contingency account, which covers projects which are also over initial estimates. Significant overages are brought back to the RTM for special appropriation. There are 5 ways the town pays for capital projects. The options are: we bond for capital projects. We pay for capital projects from unassigned fund balance. We're doing that with the 2.8 we just approved in 2110. We pay for capital projects from the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures, capital reserve or contingency. This year, $1 million is being allocated. We transfer a balance from one capital project to another capital project to partially or fully fund the other project. We do not, the RTM, get involved in that. That is a board and a Board of Finance alternative. The last thing is we can tax for capital projects within the current budget. Due to the above, none of the capital requested will require taxing our citizens. Fiscal year 22, total originally approved capital requests were 5.6 million, up 385,000, or about 7%. The Board of Selectmen represented 59% of the requested capital, or 3.4 down, about 3.4 million in total, down approximately 500,000 or 12%. The Board of Ed represented 41% of requested capital, or 2.3 million, up approximately 900,000 or 65%. Please remember that a significant number of capital projects were removed from the fiscal year budget request only to return this year. There are reserve fund capital revenues that consist of state grants, either lots of town aid and the rental of a town land. The total amount of anticipated revenues, excluding the transfer of the 2.8 million, has decreased from 582,000 to 493,000, or a decrease of approximately 90,000, or about 16%. The decrease is solely attributed to a significant reduction in investment income because we're just not going to earn anything on the balances this year. There are 4 areas that I'd like to discuss. Actions by the Board of Finance Committee, bonded capital proposed motion process, which Seth went over, the reserve fund capital reserve, and appropriation for how things are being paid. During the course of this year, working in conjunction with the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen, under the committee's leadership, the taxpayers had about a year. After years of requesting a review of the reserve fund, it was done this summer with participation. There were several adjustments made, and that included, when we go through the capital reserve fund, you'll see significant transfers being done. We encourage the Board of Finance to review the closeout of projects, not just once a year in September, but also in the February-March timeframe. That has also added another 100. Kate, can you put up the reserve fund numbers? Nope, the other one. There we go. So you see that the projected closeouts for September were approximately 370,000. The March closeouts are going to be about 260, and that's because in September we're often waiting for invoices to come in November and December, and rather than waiting a whole year before we closed it out, why not add these back into the calculation for the Board of Finance to use these funds to return to the tax. We challenged the accrual for fire apparatus and supported the Board of Selectmen's desire to reduce that amount. A significant analysis was done with bonding every one of the fire engines that were there, a comparison to the accruals, and it would generate significant savings. The other problem that was happening is the 800 to 1 million annual fire apparatus accrual was starting to crowd out investments in other infrastructure in the town. So by eliminating that, I'm not going to say that we're not going to spend it, but it allows us to invest in the town's other areas. Once the fire apparatus is no longer accrued, the committee suggested and the Board of Finance agreed to cut the public works vehicle accruals. They have some vehicles that were already pay-as-you-go. Now all vehicles will be pay-as-you-go. This is an accounting principle of consistency requiring similar items to be treated in the same way. And after the fire apparatus decision, the fact that the Board of Ed, public park and rec, police cars were not accrued, neither should the public works vehicles. In addition, the committee proposed guidance based upon a formula driven for the maximizing what this ending reserve balance should be. We're not there yet, but we'll work with the Board of Finance next year. I do want to go through this. That's up here now. As you can see, we started with about 460,000. There were two regular closeouts in September and March. You can see that these are used for multiple purposes, which are listed there. There's about 6 or 7 smaller projects that were done. About $91,000 was used during the course of the year. A further review, based upon the subcommittee work on the capital reserve, will have additional closeouts in June 30th. Again, these are estimates. There was the closeout of the fire apparatus reserve that had $1.8 million in it. And associated with that is a $1.3 million purchase of a truck waiting to on order. Now, the way this works is we pay 25% of when we put in the order and the other 75% when we get delivered, which is usually within 18 to 24 months. We're hopeful that the Board of Finance will consider bonding that when the delivery comes in, so that offers additional monies in the reserve account to be used for next year's capital. Can we go to the next fund? This has ended up with the following. We end up with the Board of Selectmen projects being $3.1 million. We end up with the Board of Ed projects being $1.2 million. By using the capital reserve contribution of $1 million, it brings the total appropriation down to, oh, you just did it when I wanted to. The total appropriation to $3,297,023. And we will be using the usual revenue as well as the 2110 assigned fund balance contribution. And you can see the total revenue and the total appropriation equal 0. So we are now in the spot where we are going to give up the floor. As Seth said, it's important that the other committees report on their capital before the motion is made. Seth will then return it to Stacy for the majority opinion, and I will read the minority opinion. And then discussion will ensue. I hand it back to you, Seth.
Thank you, Jack. Very thorough. Thank you, as always. Next, I'll recognize Public Works, Monica McNally, Chair.
Monica, can you raise your hand, make it easy for me to find you? You're good to go, Monica.
Okay. Thanks, Kate. Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica McNally, District 2, Chair of Public Works of the RTM. At a regular meeting of the Public Works Committee held on April 8th, 2021, with 10 of 11 members present, the Public Works Committee considered and voted unanimously to recommend approval to the full RTM, the Public Works capital expenditures portion of the Board of Selectmen budget. The committee met with Ed Gentile, the Director of Public Works, on February 11th of 21 to discuss the budget. Following that meeting, questions and concerns from the committee were shared with the RTM F&B Committee and the Board of Finance. Safety and energy efficiency is driving the request for the $75,000 for window replacement in the gym, and also for the $20,000 request for the ADA compliant entrance doors leading to the gym when you go over the bridge at Town Hall. The Town Hall lower parking lot requires repaving for $25,000. This is a project that was scheduled to start after the dredging project was completed, and this area is used by town employees and seniors visiting the Mather Center. Properties around Darien, including Town Hall, look great, and that's in large part due to the work the Beautification Committee has done there. We have in Darien approximately 80 miles of road, and they are on a 20-year cycle for resurfacing, or about 4 miles per year. There will be additional catch-up work done this year with approximately 6.3 miles to be paved, leading to a budget request of $1.2 million. It's expected that next year's budget will return to the normal range of approximately $1 million. There are two F-550 lowboy dump trucks that have reached the end of their useful life. Capital request for replacement is $80,000 for the sand snow plow model and $95,000 for the hook lift truck. This heavy duty truck, the hook lift truck, is fitted with a hydraulic hook lift hoist system, and it is extremely versatile. It can function as a waste hauler, a dump truck, a chipper box, a flatbed, a snowplow, basically the Swiss Army version knife of trucks. There was a discussion on the $75,000 request for property improvements at the previous site of the senior center on Edgerton. The Department of Public Works has estimated the project costs based on charges incurred from previous jobs. The committee requested information on the purpose of the project and the extent of work to be done. The Board of Selectmen objective is to complete the cleanup at the site, including removing building debris, asphalt, dead trees, concrete stair remnants, and overgrowth. The property will be graded and seeded. The goal is to create a temporary open, usable space until projects being done in the heights are completed and the public has discussed the ultimate use of the property. The work being done is focused on cleanup and was presented as work that will neither need to be redone nor undone for whatever long-term use to which the project is eventually put. There will be no increase in the operations budget. Maintenance will be rolled into the town's regular mowing schedule. The Public Works Committee appreciates the consistent, high-quality work and level of service the Public Works Department provides. We ask you to vote yes and ratify item 2111A. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Next, recognize Park and Recreation Committee, Adele Coniff, Chair.
Adele, if you would raise your hand.
Thank you. This is the capital portion of my report. The board of Adele Coniff, District 3, RTM Parks and Recreation Committee Chairman. The Board of Finance approved 2021-2022 Talenterium Parks and Recreation capital budget is $450,000. This budget includes the following: tree replacement at Tilly Pond Park for $5,000, small capital replacement for $5,000, replacement of the cherry lawn gazebo roof, which is covered in moss and deteriorating, for $15,000. Rebuilding 3 much patched cherry lawn tennis courts with post-tensioned courts, $250,000. Repainting 6 Weed Beach tennis courts, which was deferred from the 2020-2021 budget cycle, $66,000. Dredging the small silt pond and widening and repaving the pathway at Tilly Pond Park for $82,000. Dredging will remove sediment, resulting in a cleaner, healthier pond at Tilly. The pathway is in need of repair, plus at present is not wide enough to accommodate the park maintenance equipment without damaging the grass. And purchase of a Toro Groundmaster 7200 mower. This mower will allow for 2 mowing crews when needed, as well as a backup mower when others are out of service. With the removal of all capital recurring accounts by the Board of Finance, all Park and Rec capital is shown in this account. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee met on April 7th, 2021, with 11 of 15 members present, constituting a quorum, to discuss and vote on the Board of Finance approved 2021-2022 Town of Darien Parks and Recreation budget. The capital budget was approved unanimously. We urge the full RTM to approve the 2021-2022 Parks and Recreation capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele. Very nice. Appreciate it. Next, I recognize the Education Committee, Clara Sartori, Chair.
We're going to report on the Royal Roof and the HVAC system at homes, but no other capital projects.
Okay. So that's the extent of it, Clara?
Yes.
You're set. Okay. All right. Next, I will recognize Stacy TA from the Finance and Budget Committee to present an amendment. And she represents the majority vote on the committee. Stacy, thank you.
Thank you, Seth. My name is Stacy TA, District 2, member of Finance and Budget. I would like to make the motion to cut the Board of Selectmen capital budget line item by $75,000 for the Edgerton property cleanup. Do I have a second?
All right, Jim Karen.
Thank you. First, I want to thank all the members of F&B who worked collaboratively, diligently throughout the budget process, and particularly to Jack Davis for his leadership, knowledge, technical analysis of all aspects of this budget. Also, we'd like to extend our appreciation to our fellow RTM members and their committees, the Board of Finance, the Board of Education, and the Board of Selectmen for all their hard work as well. F&B met on May 5th to discuss and take action on the resolutions you have before you today, and all but one received unanimous or near unanimous support. The reason I'm speaking today is that with 14 members present, 8 voted to recommend cutting the Edgerton project from the capital budget, as we still have outstanding questions and concerns regarding the $75,000 requested by the Board of Selectmen. Additionally, it should be noted that when F&B voted on the amended capital, 12 voted in favor and 2 opposed. I hope you all have received a copy of our majority report, which provides more detail. However, I will summarize our rationale in the name of time. About the Edgerton site. Members of F&B have walked the property and it appears to be well maintained, free of debris and leaves. There is an old staircase, a flagpole, and asphalt paving on the property. These are remnants from the old senior center that was torn down as part of the Shuffle project, a project for which the RTM has already had to approve substantial money to address the cost overrun. At this point, no compelling reason for $75,000 for this project has been presented to us. The property has been maintained in this state for close to 7 years. Our concerns are as follows. The capital request was made in the last budget meeting of the Board of Selectmen and was not accompanied by an executive summary, public presentation, and detailed cost report, which typically accompanies such a request. It was inconsistent in the public process by which it came to F&B. There was a reference to a 15-year-old feasibility study, which is not part of the meeting minutes, that contemplates future capital projects. We were confused about this open question about the future use of the property and the prudence for spending taxpayer money now. There was a lack of a better story for the need for all of the line items requested. The site has been in this state for several years, since 2014, so why now? There was a lack of clear agreement on what constitutes the safety issue, nor has anyone from the town reported safety concerns to the RTM. Safety issues were not discussed by the Board of Selectmen. Costs were estimates that still need to go out to bid, and the project needs P&Z approval. Concern that the project is not fully thought through, hasn't gone through the proper process with full transparency and understanding by the key stakeholders. We feel it is fiscally irresponsible to ask taxpayers to spend $75,000 on this property when there is no defined plan or use for the property after the expenditure. Capital plans should include supporting analysis and rationale that we typically receive from the Board of Selectmen, and more importantly, a public process. Given the fact that the $75K does not materially change the use of the property now, the open question of the future use of the property based upon reference from a 2006 feasibility study, which contemplates major capital projects, the need for clarification on what the safety issues are, and the desire to have more discussions with the Board of Selectmen and public input prior to investing more capital at this time, F&B recommends that the full RTM vote to reduce the Board of Selectmen capital budget by $75,000. We look forward to a public discussion tonight and hopefully some answers to our questions so that every member of the RTM has the same information and can feel confident in their vote this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Now I'll recognize Jack Davis, Chair of F&B, but in this case, presenting the minority report from the F&B committee.
I'm Jack Davis. In the past and the prior to, because this is such a long meeting, I've been taking snippets out of the full report because otherwise we'd be here to midnight. This report I'm going to read. I'm Jack Davis, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I'll be giving the committee's minority report, for which I voted for, regarding the proposed cut to the Edgerton property for $75,000. As committee chair, I asked Stacy PA to write and deliver the majority member's report because Stacy was in a better position to present the majority position fairly and eloquently. Stacy just did that, and I thank her. Members of the majority and members of the minority concur on several important points. This was a late entry during the budget deliberations, which amplified issues related to the public record and to the proposed appropriation for the work on the Edgerton property. There was no executive summary or detailed capital report, which is normally required for all other capital requests as part of the budget process. Whilst there exists a more detailed financial spreadsheet on estimated costs, it was not provided to the committee, and the high-level email outlining estimated costs was agreed was atypical of the usually outstanding estimates the town and committees receive from Ed Gentile and the Public Works Department. When this project was introduced, the history associated with the Edgerton property was never publicly presented or discussed. Based upon the above, it was a mutual opinion of the committee that the appropriation of the cleanup in the Edgerton property was not properly presented from the beginning. In speaking with several F&B members, it was thought that the discussion to date, whilst lacking the initial normal debate information on the public record, would be sufficient to proceed. It was intended to be discussed all the items above referenced in the committee's capital report, which I just gave. However, the motion and subsequent vote indicated that several members of the committee strongly believed there was a need to highlight the requirements to provide appropriate financials, need analysis, and details at a higher level. But let's take a step back for a moment for some context. As Jay-Z and our committee have observed, all too often in the past, capital projects had items value engineered out of the original specifications, items cut out of the capital project, simply to meet budget demands at the expense of getting the job done right the first time. Then at some future date, additional funds would be required to cover the expense remediating the deficiency resulting in the original budget cut, typically resulting in a more expensive cost to our taxpayers. Instead of value engineering a cut for budget purposes, Jay-Z's leadership and the committee's position has been to encourage folks to return to the Board of Finance and the RTM for the funds to do the job right the first time. That has been happening in our projects. And I'm very proud of all of our boards to be working with that. However, the Edgerton property is a perfect example of those past practices of value engineering cutting. The demolition of the old senior center was originally budgeted for $300,000 some 8 or so years ago. Asbestos was found, and if I recall, a special appropriation was requested and granted to complete the project. Unfortunately, this project is still not completed to its original specification. Walking the property, there is some of the original foundation still on ground level. Old railroad ties outlining the former sandbox is still in the ground, as is a now dilapidated bocce ball court with bench. This is in addition to other debris, stairs and walls that were never removed, a sidewalk in disrepair, and the originally proposed grading that was never completed. Whilst it was just said that the grounds are maintained, conversations with neighbors would say otherwise. I've been told that the grounds are mowed only once or twice a year at most. The area has more weeds than grass. Trees need to be removed, including a very large double trunk pine tree with a 5-foot split in the middle of the base of one of the trunks. All of these present a potential safety hazard for anyone using the property. All this needs to be addressed now. Visiting the property, one can see a path from students walking across the property instead of the sidewalk by the lower Middlesex field to access or leave Middlesex and then go up or down a steep incline, a shortcut I myself would have taken at their age. Parents are avoiding the traffic at Middlesex Middle School by dropping off their children the back way during the same time buses are arriving. A practice that was not supposed to be allowed, and with the elimination of the loop will reduce that. There are visitors to the ground as parents and younger children watch soccer games on the lower Middlesex field. In addition, it's a frequent, you can see neighbors walking their dogs as a frequent occurrence. All this was taken into account by the members of the minority. To summarize, both the majority and minority agreed with respect to the level of information provided to the committee and the RTM during the budget process was not what the committee nor the RTM would expect in the normal course or usually gets from the Board of Selectmen, which is very good in what they give us. The main difference between the majority and minority appears to be the following. The members of the majority desired to know if the $75,000 would be wasted monies because the future use of the project property has not been determined. And the majority is concerned that potential future intended uses have not been disclosed. Meantime, the members of the minority believe that the appropriation does not relate to future uses, but is a remediation of the original demolition of the old senior center. It addresses grounds desperate, and I mean desperate, in need of attention. It eliminates potential safety hazards and mitigates potential liability regarding those using the property, including our students, the neighbors, and others. It eliminates an eyesore. It is one. And there will be ample opportunity and time to weigh in and opine on any future use, including the financials associated with those future uses. As the first selectman stated, the uses would be determined after the Norotan Heights projects were completed or substantially completed, and that's some time off. Waiting for a plan to come to fruition is simply a further delay that of what should have been done years ago. Or put another way, from a minority member's perspective, this project is about a long overdue cleanup on aisle 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. We're now in debate on the amendment. Are there any committees who would wish to speak on this? Monica, Public Works had some comments, but since the amendment hadn't been offered, Public Works could speak again. Also, any other committees that wish to speak?
If there's a committee chair that wishes to speak, please raise your hand. Mac Patrick. Mac, you need to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Mac Patrick. I'm Chairman of Public Health and Safety. Due to the timing of this, our committee was not able to discuss this. We met last week, going over other things, but I will speak as a resident of Edgerton and also chair of District 5. But if you'd like me, Seth, I can wait on that or go right now.
I'm the next. Yes, listen, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I really want to. My hat on now as a resident of Edgerton. I use that property almost every day. I've been working very closely with another District 5 member, Ken Fives, and he wrote a letter that was sent to everybody today. I want to paraphrase a little bit of that because it's really important. So this piece of property has great potential for usable public open space, but it's been overgrown and unsightly for many years. Most Edgerton neighbors, and it's really more than that, it's Middlesex neighbors, it's Norotan neighbors. We've spoken with them and they feel leaving the property as is could present a safety hazard, as it is used as a cut through for about 50 middle school students who walk to school every day. And if you walk on the property, it's apparent the land is bumpy, it's uneven. It holds water when it rains. Many of the trees are dead and dying. There's debris littered across the property. It really was not properly disposed of during the demolition. The future of this property is uncertain at this time, but we think it's worthwhile to make this land as safe and as viable as possible. Again, usable space is hard to come by in Darien. We should take this opportunity to improve an area that will not only be used by the neighborhood, but as a potential as a valuable townwide asset. So I will be voting against this amendment, and I strongly encourage all our team members to vote against it as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mac. Any other committees? I realize Mac wasn't speaking on behalf of the committee, but are there any committees that would like to speak further on this?
The only hand I see up is not a chair of a committee.
I'll get to a non-chair person when I get to the floor, RTM floor. But if there are no committees, then I'll go to town officials.
I don't believe any town officials had expressed a desire to speak prior to the meeting.
Okay. Can you recognize if there are any that want to speak now?
Okay, first selectman would like to speak.
Okay. I recognize Jamie Stevenson, first selectman.
Here she goes. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I appreciate. I'll only take just a few minutes.
But I too want to thank the RTM this evening for, as always, your great diligence in reviewing the town budgets. And of course, to our terrific staff and all of our department heads for the hard work that they do, putting their budgets together. And especially gratifying this year was our ability to fully utilize the OpenGov software platform to do our budget review. So really look forward to increasing our utilization of that. You should take great pride in the fact that we are meeting so successfully virtually. We're one of the only towns that is able to pull off this level of work in such a large group. So kudos to all of you and everybody that made it happen. Very briefly on the Edgerton property. So our COVID year gave us a really interesting look of so many things in our town. And this property was simply one of those areas that many of us were able to take a new and different look at. Many times when I visited that property this year, as some have already said, there were middle school kids either walking to or from school, or their gym class was out taking a walk across that property. The teachers parked down there this year, and as a matter of fact, I saw an invitation today that there will be middle school graduation parking down in the lower lot at that Edgerton property. And in some ways, letting some years go by and letting that land settle from the demolition has raised to the surface some of those construction debris that otherwise wouldn't have been found. So now we see clearly what was left behind, what needs to come out. The trees that were damaged with the demolition are now obvious to us, and they do present a safety hazard, so they should come down too. And again, so much has changed in our world. Back when we did the Shuffle project, we didn't really anticipate the incredible amount of development that was going to be happening in the Norotan Heights area. So I really look at this parcel of land. There's only about 3.6 acres that's actually usable land of the 7.3. And I strongly recommend that nothing happen to this property until well after those developments have come to fruition, all the residents are in, and I can guarantee that the people that are the hundreds and hundreds of people that'll be moving in there are going to be looking for some open space environments to enjoy. So as I contemplated this project, I really saw it not just potentially as a stepping stone, but this could be the final project for the Edgerton site, all in all, since we do highly prize open space, and undeveloped land in the town of Darien is at a high premium. So I support the neighbors in the desire to clean this up. Let's make it some good, usable, passive space for people to enjoy. And at some point in the future, an administration may or may not take up discussions on future utilization. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Amy. Any other town officials?
I have not received notification from any that they wish to speak.
Okay, members of the RTM?
I have Teresa Vogt has had her hand up.
Teresa?
Can you hear me? Hi, Teresa
Yes.
Vogt, District 6. So I decided after receiving all the reports today, I decided to drive over to Middlesex because I haven't been there in a few years, and walk over there. Nothing much has changed since my kids were at the middle school. Kids have always walked through that property when they weren't supposed to get to school. Parents have always dropped their kids off there, despite the schools always saying, please do not drop your kids over on Edgerton because that's the bus loop. But there's nothing unsafe about that property. Walking around there with my dog today, I don't see anything unsafe. I just think spending $75,000 without a concrete plan in place is not a good use of taxpayer dollars. A better use in terms of student safety would be sidewalks. Walked over on the sidewalk by Middlesex that's on Hollow Tree Ridge Road, and there are currently orange cones in several places because the sidewalk is in such disrepair that the kids have to watch out where they're walking. We have to have orange cones in place so that they don't trip and fall. That is a safety concern. I would rather see $75,000 spent on sidewalks for our students to walk safely to the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Others?
Mark Adaletta.
Mark?
Mark, you need to unmute yourself.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes,
Very
sir.
good. Mark Adaletta, District 5. As a taxpayer and a 16-year member of this body representing District 5, I ask you to oppose this amendment and instead to support, I think, this worthwhile project. As you've heard, this property is sat idle, having never been properly cleared or restored to its natural state since that old senior center building was demolished about 7 years ago. And based on the use this property receives, as you've heard this evening, and no announced development plans for it, I personally expect it's going to sit idle as open space for the foreseeable future. As such, it is way past time to be cleaned up. Those of you who know me know I never take spending taxpayer dollars lightly, ever. In this case, I believe the expenditure is warranted. District 5 and this neighborhood are among our most intensely used, heavily traveled, and most visible parts of town. We all know it hosts our high school, most of our athletic fields, a Little League complex, our largest transportation hub, the middle school you just heard, and soon 2 of our largest, if not largest, developments, all in the immediate area. The intensity of activity in this area continues to increase. In my opinion, our town and this neighborhood deserve to have this eyesore finally cleaned up, as it should have been back when the senior center was demolished. Let's not penalize these neighbors yet again with our continued inaction. I thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Mark. Any others?
Yep. I have Monica McNally.
Monica?
Hi, I'm Monica McNally, District 2. I am in favor of the appropriation for the work to be done at 30 Edgerton, and I am not in favor of the amendment. The 2+ acres of town-owned property is surrounded by many homes. I counted 92 on bordering streets alone. And I believe our role as elected officials is to make the town better, even if just a little bit each year. I believe that the plan the DPW is working off of will do just that. And I have confidence in the DPW's estimate as far as cost goes. I did wonder, just like everyone else, why now? But you know what? Then I thought about it. I think the real question is, why not now? Yes, it would have been better if the cleanup had taken place 7 years ago and this property had been able to be used during that time, but that's hindsight. So I believe with an investment of $75,000, the town can do the right thing. And that, in my opinion, is to clean the site up, make it safe, and make it presentable for the neighbors and for our whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Others?
I have Nicholas Franca.
Nicholas?
Yes, hi there. I guess I have a question more than a statement. I don't know if I missed the question time or not. But you know, from my experience, I head over to that area mainly, you know, driving one of my kids to soccer practice or over there on the weekends to referee a soccer game. And, you know, certainly it seems like there's a fair amount of traffic there and traffic flow. And, you know, I think some of sort of the turning around and loops are beneficial for that taxing, for that, you know, traffic flow. And so I didn't know, like, was this viewed as just a cleanup? And then I heard someone say, oh, the turnaround's going to be gone and that will make people not drive there as much. But then I feel like you have to drive there for those soccer fields or whatever sports you play on those fields. And so I just didn't understand the whole scope of the project. Is it sort of cleaning it up, but still thinking about, you know, safe and good traffic flow? Because on the weekends, when there's a couple soccer games there are, lots of kids, little kids, and lots of cars.
Thank you.
This is Kate Bush. At this time, it is just clean up the driveways not being removed. The parking lot is not being removed. I don't know if the first selectman wants to add anything to that.
Sure, I'm happy to. The asphalt that's being removed was the drop-off loop that was in front of the old building. There's going to be a new piece of asphalt added to allow better access to the lower parking lot area. So traffic flow should continue to work well. The parking will still exist both above and below the site of the old building, because we know that that's very useful parking space. So I think it will function very well, but reduce the amount of impervious surface overall.
Okay, Seth, you have Michael Heights next.
Michael?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Great. Yeah, I'm Mike Heights. I'm on the F&B committee and was in the minority voting not to reduce the appropriation here. And for me, it was really a matter of basically responding to first questions about the safety issues presented by this property and the intention of this expenditure to remediate such safety issues. Now, I understand that, there may be some disagreements as to whether there's safety issues or not, but in my feeling for voting no, as I did last week, it was simply a matter of substance over process. The property, having walked the property on Sunday, I thought it was in sore need of some tender loving care. Waiting for a plan to come to fruition is really to simply delay what should have been done years ago. And while I think the minority, as Jack has said, and the majority in this case of the committee agree as to the process, perhaps issues and improvements that could have occurred in the process of vetting this, to delay it any further, I just can't get my head around doing that. I think, for those of you on the RTM who have, legal training, probably will recall in law school learning the notion, maybe in the first year, called the notion of an attractive nuisance. And, that's something that I won't go into, but for me, my ears perked up when I heard that, because once a property owner is on notice that maybe the property could be deemed an attractive nuisance, as I recall my training, then, there's a compelling reason to go forward and correct that nuisance. Otherwise, liability issues could ensue. So for me, again, it was a simple matter. When I heard the issue of that being teed up and having actually walked the property just the other day, revisiting it as I did, it made my vote quite clear, and my vote was to vote no for any reduction. So those are really my remarks.
Thank you very much. Are there others who wish to speak?
Yes, and I'm trying to make it easier. Mr. Fison is next, and he'll be followed by Mr. Alfanos.
Great. You hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. This is Kenneth Fiveson, District 5. As Matt Patrick mentioned earlier, I sent an email today detailing my support for the $75,000 Edgerton budget item, along with some pictures of the site. And I hope you guys were able to read it. I had a few more quick points to make. I speak to you tonight as a neighbor of the Edgerton property. I've lived on Edgerton Street for over 10 years with my family, and I've been on the RTM for over 8. Throughout that time, myself and several other neighbors have acted as liaison in conversations with town leaders regarding the condition and future uses of the Edgerton property. In January of this year, the Board of Selectmen engaged our neighborhood group to detail a plan to clean up the property. They were very transparent in the specifics of this cleanup, which, as mentioned today, includes tree work and light regrading. They also mentioned eliminating crumbling staircases and sidewalks, digging up the unused pavement drop-off area, and adding fresh topsoil to a landscape that has been covered in pieces of old cement and weeds for over 5 years. They also assured us that the property would remain usable open space for the foreseeable future, but that the final purpose was not certain. Taken at face value, this plan is very positive for the surrounding area. The town is simply completing demolition work that should have been done a long time ago, as was mentioned tonight. I want to make it clear to the RTM that when we shared this plan with area neighbors, we were met with overwhelming support. The neighbors haven't been uninterested in this issue, as the majority report infers. Rather, they've been informed about it for months and pleased with the steps the town is taking to fix a long outstanding problem. I ask you to please support the Edgerton neighbors tonight and vote to keep the $75,000 for the Edgerton cleanup in the budget, thus voting against the proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Received your letter, distributed it. Thanks.
We have Mr. Orfanos
Mr.
next, and
Alfano.
then Ms. Magui will follow him.
Okay.
This is Peter Orfanos, District 6, also on the Finance and Budget Committee subcommittee. I did vote against the amendment to reduce to eliminate the appropriation, and I shared most of the same thoughts that Mike Heights presented. I won't go back over those, but I want to amplify one point, and that is I believe that process does count. I think that the substance should take precedence over the process in this limited situation. However, I'd just like to point out that for having listened to the presentation by Monica from the Public Works Committee, that their committee seemed to be better informed than ours did on the public things, matters that were on the public record. And I think that if there had been similar level of disclosure and discussion on the public record before our committee, I think possibly many of the questions of the majority may have been resolved. I can't say they would have for sure, but I think that, again, full candid disclosure of the goals and objectives of this stated on the record before it came to our committee, the process, the result may have been different. We may have come out with a different result. So again, I believe in supporting the expenditure in favor of doing the cleanup as a practical matter in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Who will be next, Kate?
Ms. Magui, followed by Mr. Bain.
Ms. Gui, please.
Hi, everybody. Carolina Magui, District 3. I have a question about the process, actually, or an observation. Several people tonight have mentioned, including our first selectman, that there is a plan, and somebody mentioned a sketch. I've never seen anything. I'm not even fan of the Finance and Budget Committee. Therefore, I'm even less informed about what the plan is as a regular RTM member and part of the Education Committee. So I'll appreciate, in the future, if all pertinent information can be submitted to all the RTM members, so we are all informed about what the plans are. I know $75,000 is not a gigantic expenditure, but on the other hand, I did walk today also as well the property with my dog. I'm there. My daughter plays soccer, so she practices twice a week, and we have games there. I spend Friday and Sunday there sitting, and I've never felt that there was an issue of unsafety. As I said, I walked it again today. Walked all the way the hill to where the kids go up to the school. I mean, there's a rock here and a rock there, but I wouldn't consider it unsafe. So that's my only observation, that I will appreciate if any plans that are being discussed can be distributed between all the members of the RTM before we can vote towards ordering something. Thank you.
Thank you. David Bain?
He'll be followed by Ms. Baldwin.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. David Bain from District 5. I support the amendment. I think it sends an important message that we don't do things or spend town money without a purpose. The Edgerton demolition was approved as part of the shuffle plan, and the RTM was promised at that time, actually it was a decade ago, not just 7 years ago, that the property be cleaned up by an affordable housing developer. and who would develop property or affordable housing on that property, and that never happened. And that's okay. I mean, that's water under the bridge. I get that. But now we're told by the first selectman tonight that the property probably will never be developed, or at least there are no current plans to do that. But why would we spend money without committing to that? We may end up spending the money today and then find out a couple of years from now that there'll be some other plan that will require that other work be done. So let's do this as a coherent plan. I don't want to spend money only to find out that it was unnecessarily spent when we decided what to actually do with the property. I'm not opposed to cleaning it up, but I just think it needs to be done as part of a purpose. And I think the RTM has a duty to the taxpayers to do it that way and not just do it, as outside the budget process, because it apparently came into the budget process outside the normal process and without the reporting that is normally required. So I think we should, wait and put this on the agenda for next year. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Sarah Baldwin?
Sorry, didn't mean to hit that.
Okay. I think perhaps you did not want to speak. So Seth, that is everybody who has not spoken yet. You now have the first selectman and Stacy TA both had indicated they would like to speak. So your call. Where to go?
Okay. Stacy and then Jamie, but please abbreviate. Stacy?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Fidson implied that the majority report said that we said the neighbors were not engaged. It's actually the other way around is what it's implied in the report, is that the Board of Selectmen, the responsibility was on the Board of Selectmen to reach out to the neighbors, and that was not clear to us. It's still, there was nothing on the public record that neighbors met with the Board of Selectmen. They may have met with the first selectman, but that's not the same thing. Thank you.
Okay, and Jamie Stevenson, first selectman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just want to state for the record that maps and information was sent to the chairman of the F&B committee on April 6th and sent again on April 13th, just to make sure that it was all received and distributed as needed. And that's really all I wanted to correct the record.
Thank you.
Okay, Seth, you have Adele Coniff.
Okay, Adele?
Adele Coniff, District 3, I'd like to call the question.
All right. Would you give me a second here and just ask, let me ask, is there anybody else who would like to speak?
I see no hands raised, Seth.
So are you ready to vote? Adele, I'll just ask if they're ready to vote. That's okay.
No one's raising a hand to object to that, Seth.
Okay, we will proceed to vote, and we're voting just the amendment, everybody.
So I've launched the poll. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. The amendment fails.
All right. So now we will vote on, we will take up the main motion. Are there any committees who wish to report further on the main motion? It was not amended, so I wouldn't think so.
Excuse me, Seth. The question has been asked whether we can get a head count of the vote.
Yes, we can. What exactly, who asked the question and how's it? We know hey, what were I don't have the percentages in front of me. What were the percentages?
59% no, 37% yes, 4% abstaining.
Okay, so who was asking about? Can you tell who was?
Carolina McGoey.
I didn't get that, but
Carolina McGoey.
Oh, Carolina. Okay. Carolina, it would appear that the margin is significant. We can do a roll call vote, but that will take some time to do. Is the margin accept?
Seth, you just cut out. Monica?
Hi, we will know how everybody voted on this at the end of the evening. Right now, the percentage is comfortable enough to move forward on this. So I don't think we need a roll call vote, but everybody's vote will be noted at the end of the meeting.
Kate, can you unmute Carolina for a moment?
Yep.
Thank you. I'm not calling for a roll call vote. I just want to make sure that we are 100 RTM members and that either 100 or less than 100 people voted, because there's people that I see that are RTM members that don't have their number next to their name, etc., etc. So that I don't want a roll call. I just want to make sure that we have RTM members voting for this.
We cannot, we can't give you the vote count, the specific vote count. And if a member of the RTM leadership would like to address that, perhaps Monica or Seth.
Yes, Carolina, to your question, we know if RTM members are voting or not. We know who is on the list. We've already pulled them. So the 100 or Kate, what's the number tonight? I don't think we have 100, but it's very close. But each person's vote will be recorded on this as well as all other items that are voted on. And there will be a record posted for this meeting. I hope that answers your question, but if not, hit me again.
It's Seth, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. For some reason, the network went down briefly there. Sorry, so where are we?
Darianne?
Thank you very much.
The motion failed.
Yeah, the motion failed, and somebody asked for
and the margins were sufficient according to the policy that the Rules Committee had developed.
Right.
To not call for a roll call vote.
Okay. So we are now the appropriation from the capital and reserve non-recurring expenditures is approved.
No. Seth, you have to vote on
we didn't vote that. No, we didn't vote that yet. Okay. So we voted the amendment. So now we go to the unamended motion Is there anyone, are you ready to vote on that?
If there's anybody who would like to speak to the main motion, please raise your hand. All right, I have Amy Barsanti.
Okay, Amy.
Just lost her.
Yes, hi,
Amy
is this,
Amy is chair of,
yep.
Easy
Are
and
we
easy.
also voting for at this point the operating expenditures, or are we just still,
no, we're still in the capital.
okay, never mind.
Mr.
That's-
Davis?
Hi, this is Jack Davis. Just because we're at this stage, I want to restate what we are now voting on. We are now voting on 2111A, resolved that an appropriation of $3,279,023 is hereby made from the reserve fund for capital and non-recurring expenditures for the purpose of meeting expenses of the town of Darien as shown by the budget this day approved.
Correct. We're ready to vote?
Okay, let me make sure I. Okay. Use your poll. Closing the poll. The motion carries.
Excellent. Next item on the agenda is the Selectmen's operating budget. And I'll recognize Jack Davis, Chair of Finance and Budget Committee.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3 Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move Section B of the RTM Resolution 21-11, authorizing and approving appropriations in the general fund for the Selectmen's operating budget. Do I have a second?
Jim Cameron.
Thank you, Jim. If there's no objections, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. The overall town's operating budget is $43 million, up approximately $1.1 million, or 2.34% compared to the prior year's budget of $45 million. There is a significant modification comparing the final budget with the amount requested due to the zeroing out of capital raised through taxes. The overall two-year compound annual growth rate change is a negative 2.2%. More on that later. By way of background, this portion of the budget is comprised of four primary parts: town services, the library operating budget grant, debt service, and the transfer of funds to the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures, which is previously discussed in Resolution 2111A, is zero this year, not requiring funds to be raised by the taxpayers. It is also important to note that this part of the budget is the appropriations for expenditure. Associated revenues are addressed in Section F as an offset in calculating the mill rate. I'll address certain aspects of the revenue in that section. Town services. The Board of Finance adjusted Board of Selectmen operating expenditure budget is 31.8 million, up 1.2 million, or 3.86% without the library grant. The 2-year compound annual growth rate is 2.8%. As previously mentioned, an approximate 275,000 increase in this year was associated with a lower than expected return and the end of a pension accrual. In addition, there are 3 FTEs associated with the initiation of the 3rd civilian dispatch shift. Healthcare was 0. The library operating budget grant. The library, although privately owned, has an operating budget paid by the town. The library is responsible for fundraising to purchase of books, technology, and capital improvements. The library's proposed budget is 4.1 million, up 104,000, or 2.6% from last year. Interesting, the compound annual growth rate of the library increase is more than the 2.6. It's at 3.6 compared fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 22, primarily due to a more significant increase from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21. The increase was primarily due to pension costs and salary increases for this year to ensure employees are paid a competitive wage compared to other libraries. Debt service. Terms, conditions, and length of any debt issuance is the purview of the Board of Finance. Only the town can issue debt. Neither the Board of Ed nor the Sewer Authority can issue debt. As such, the total debt has components of town debt, Board of Ed debt, and sewer debt, all of which is attributable to the current capital current and past projects. Total debt payment for the fiscal year 21 budget was $8,900,000, down approximately $1.8 million or 16% from the prior year. This was due to several points. The town early retired $2.1 million of debt in December 2019 using unassigned general funds. The town refinanced debt in April 2020, which resulted in savings of approximately $291,000. Total debt payments for fiscal year 22 is $10 million, up approximately 1.3 or 14% due to the items mentioned above. However, the 2-year compound annual debt service is actually down 3.4% when compared fiscal year 20 to 22. Again, because we prepaid things. Specific to the component parts. The town debt service is 4.5 million, up 1 million or 30% from the prior year, with a 2-year compound annual growth rate of 4.6%. The Board of Ed debt service is 5.4, up 260,000 or 5% from the prior year, and a 2-year compound annual growth rate of negative 5.3%. Sewer debt is only 314,000, down 38,000 or 11,000 from the prior year, and has significant 2-year compound annual reduction of negative 35%. Kate, can you put up the town Volpe report and keep it up for a while everybody else is reporting? As the June 30th, 2021, thank you. As the June 30th, thank you. All right. As the June 30th, 2021, the town will have approximately 62 million outstanding. Debt is scheduled to be 54.6 million, not counting authorized but issued debt of approximately 43 million, which I mentioned before is primarily due to 39 million of unissued Oxbridge debt and 2+ million of sewer authority debt. Capital contribution. This section represents the transfer from taxes and revenues for capital passed through Resolution 2111A to the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenses. We have already discussed time and time again that the amount to be raised by taxes and other revenues in this budget is zero due to the capital reserve and transfer of unassigned fund balance of approximately 2.8 million. At our meeting on Cinco de Mayo, with 14 of 17 members present, the F&B committee voted unanimously to approve the Selectmen's operating budget. The other committees now will give a greater detail on the various departments. I return this to Seth.
Thank you, Jack. I recognize Park and Rec Committee, Adele Coniff, Chair.
Del Coniff, District 3, RTM Parks and Recreation Committee Chairman. The Darien Parks and Recreation Department maintains approximately 210 acres of parkland in addition to 16.2 acres at Highland Farm, the Meadows, the East Picnic area located at Weed Beach on the old Short Lane property, Police Department grounds, the Hecker property, and the Diller property. They also maintain facilities at Weed Beach, Pear Tree Beach, Cherry Lawn, McGuan Park, and Baker Park. The department is also responsible for all organized programs and events open to the general public. Most activities are operated on a self-sustaining basis. Revenues are also generated by beach stickers, boat permits, paddle hut and picnic rentals, kayak storage, concessions, park reservations, and rentals and adult and youth sport league fees. Revenue is anticipated to be approximately $600,000 for 2021-2022, though with program participation increasing dramatically in the spring of 2021, as well as increase in park usage, that number may be higher. The Board of Finance approved 2021-2022 Talenterium Parks and Recreation operating budget is $2,045,624. In response to COVID, the Parks and Recreation Commission added monitors last summer who moved from park to park, including the beaches, ensuring pandemic regulations and park rules were met. They answered questions and reported regularly to the department and the commission. The commission decided that the mobile security presence was beneficial to all and have included a seasonal mobile security guard in this budget, $32,266. Beach parking fees have been raised to offset this increased expense. Other expense increases of note are an increase in pest control for $15,000, which should better control the geese problem, and extra funds for maintenance of concession equipment, $8,000. The RTM Park and Rec Committee followed and gave input on this budget beginning in December 2020, when the commission was discussing and voting on their budget requests. Thank you to Lori Bohr, Park and Rec Commission Chairman, and the Park and Rec Commission for listening to our input. Pam Gary, Park and Rec Department Director, who walked us through this budget and answered our questions. Jennifer Charneski, Town Finance Director, and Kathleen Bush, Town Administrator, who facilitated access to OpenGov for RTM committees, the Board of Selectmen, our RTM F&B and Board of Finance budget buddies, and to the Board of Finance. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee met on April 7th, 2021, with 11 of 15 members present, constituting a quorum to discuss and vote on the Board of Finance approved 2021-2022 Talenterium Parks and Recreation budget. The operating budget was approved unanimously. We urge the full RTM to approve the 2021-2022 Parks and Recreation operating budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele. Recognize Public Works, Monica McNally, Chair.
Go ahead, Monica. Monica, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, my bad. Okay, my name is Monica McNally, District 2, Chair of the Public Works Committee of the RTM, at a regular meeting of the Public Works Committee held on April 8th with 10 of 11 members present. The Public Works Committee considered and voted unanimously on to recommend for approval to the full RTM, the Public Works. I have capital, but I don't think that's right.
Operating.
Operating portion of the Board of Selectmen budget. The committee met with Ed Gentile, the Director of Public Works, on February 11th, 2021, to discuss the budget. Following that meeting, questions and concerns from the committee were shared with the RTM, Finance and Budget Committee, and the Board of Finance. At their, I'm sorry, you know what? I'm on the wrong one, that's why. But all of that still counts. The Public Works budget request is $4.4 million, $4,404,929. This is an increase of $15,923 or 0.36% over the 2021 budget. The budget reflects no change in the number of full-time employees or part-time employees. This basically flat budget is accomplished while the Public Works Department continues to make meaningful and measurable improvements to the service provided to the town, while at the same time implementing sustainable operating efficiencies. The decline in disposal permit fee revenue of $28,000 was due in part to fewer second or third permits being purchased by residents, and also including seniors who received the first one at no charge. The waste management tipping fee revenue reduction of $50,000 or 11% is a function of more haulers taking their waste directly to Bridgeport to save money. The replacements on tires are on a 2-year cycle, and this is an on year, which has led to an increase in that line item of $9,300 or a 78% increase. Cost savings due to recycling, where we actually make money rather than pay to have it hauled away, continue to accrue. Savings from single stream this year were $315,926. The Advisory Committee on Sustainability has provided the town with a list of what's in and what's out, which has been a key driver for providing clean recyclables to our vendor. The food scrap program continues to be in demand. The sale of compost kits and tonnage continue upward, and we have shared information with other towns such as Bethel, Stamford, Norwalk, and New Canaan that have inquired about our program. Last year, we collected on average 3.6 tons of material a month to be composted. It contributed to a savings of approximately $4,200 for the town. Household hazardous waste is June 5th. As you remember, last year we had to cancel that. The budget increase of 24% or $1,600 reflects the increase in vendor fees. As a reminder, the recycling program now includes paint. Last year we collected almost 46 tons of paint for a savings of $4,400 to the town. The Public Works Committee appreciates that consistent high-quality work and the level of service that the Public Works Department provides. We ask you to vote yes and ratify item 2111-B. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Recognize Public Health and Safety, Mac Patrick, Chair.
There we go. Hi, I'm Mac Patrick, Chairman of Public Health and Safety. We met in a special virtual meeting on May 5th with 9 members present in the meeting, constituting a quorum. We discussed portions of the budget relating to fire, police, disaster preparedness, emergency medical services, and human service. The police budget has an overall increase of 5.8%, primarily driven by negotiated wage increases, patrol personnel expenditures, and professional standards expenses. 1 civilian dispatcher was added to the budget. The fire budget has an overall increase of 1.5%, primarily due to contractual obligations. The 3 all-volunteer fire departments have decreases in equipment repair and replacement costs. The Fire Commission and Fire Marshal budgets have increases driven by foreseen workloads with multiple large mixed-use developments. Increases are occurring in professional services. Hoarding and blight issues are stable. Ongoing savings are expected in software maintenance. It should be noted that the town budget for fire is $1.75 million versus $8.6 million for police. The town greatly benefits from an all-volunteer fire department. The emergency medical services or post 53 budget is up 30,000, and that's related to professional services. It is noteworthy that the staffing of post 53 is an all-volunteer, and much of the operation is self-funded through donations. The town funding is about $164,000, and the average response time is still 6.5 minutes. It's incredible. The Human Service Department includes human services and outside assistance, the Senior Center, Senior Transportation, Youth Services, and the Public Health Department. The overall budget is down 13%, and that's primarily driven by decreased Senior Center and Youth Service expenditures. The Public Health Department's budget is up 4% with the increases in personnel contractual services. This budget is $360,000 and receives revenues of $119,000 from licenses and permits. Youth Services budget is down 7% due to anticipated decreases in enrollments to various programs. The Public Health and Safety Committee voted unanimously to support these aspects of the town of Darien budget, and we ask that you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Now, Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee, Amy Barsanti, Chair.
Okay, hello, thank you. This is Amy Barsanti, District 1, Chair of Planning, Zoning, and Housing. As the budget of the Planning and Zoning Department is virtually unchanged year over year, I will keep my remarks brief in proportion to the task at hand that we all have to get through this evening. On March 4th, 2021, PZ&H Committee meeting was held with 11 of 13 members present, representing a quorum. Jeremy Ginsberg, the Director of Planning and Zoning, presented an overview of the department's budget. Needless to say, the requested budget was virtually unchanged from the previous year. We did discuss main items in the budget facing the department, specifically the need to create the affordable housing report as required by the state. That deadline is looming in July 2022. Despite the large permit increases that the department is facing from the various developments in town, and in addition to the COVID-related housing starts and renovation starts, they are largely flat. The group did not voice any concerns or objections to the budget during the meeting. There's no opposition voiced, and we recommend to proceed as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We just leave TGS&A and Ed. I don't think either of those have any comments, do you? Okay. Elected officials of the town?
None had previously expressed a desire to speak.
Okay, members of the RTM?
I see no hands raised.
Okay, are you ready to vote? This is item 2111B. Selectmen's operating budget.
Okay, I'm sending the poll. Okay, a minute in voting. I'm closing the poll and the motion carries.
Oh, that's great. Next item would be 21-11C, the Board of Education operating budget. I recognize the Education Committee, Clara Sartori, Chair.
Hi, I'm Clara Sartori, from District 2. I would like to move item 2111C. Can I have a second? Can you hear me?
Peter Orfanos.
Great, thank you very much. And we're going to discuss the appropriation of $106,624,199 hereby made in the general fund for the education operating budget. The RTM Education Committee met on Monday, May 3rd, with 16 of 16 members present. David Deneen, Chair of the Board of Ed, Alan Adley, Superintendent of Schools, Marge Sion, Director of Human Resources, Rich Rudel, Director of Finance, Mike Lynch, Director of Facilities, and Shirley Klein, Director of Special Ed, as well as several members of the Board of Education attended the meeting. It's the RTM Education Committee's job to thoroughly examine the Board of Education operating budget and make a recommendation to the full RTM on whether the budget represents the best investment in our schools at a reasonable cost to the taxpayers. Tonight, we can make that recommendation. Beginning in January 2021, the RTM Education Committee attended budget workshops and Board of Ed meetings virtually to learn about the district priorities and to assess their value to the students and to the community. In looking to 2021-2022, district priorities will focus on addressing student needs as the pandemic subsides by maintaining class sizes, implementing continuing technology initiatives, and providing student devices as well as infrastructure upgrades. Support for social and emotional needs of students through the ruler framework will strengthen and standardize current practices. Increased STEM opportunities, new diversity programs such as Open Choice and Teacher in Residence programs are examples of initiatives that will engage Darien's children as students and prepare them for a 21st century world. A new RC, which outlines COVID expenses and grant funding, was added to the 2020-21 budget. As of this date, the district forecasts to return more than $1 million to the town pending year-end account reconciliation and approval by the Board of Education. Under the American Rescue Plan, Darien could receive as much as $964,000 to be used for specific purposes relating to the opening of schools. Federal funds will be made available to the states and to the cities and towns. Grant applications will not be available until the summer. Funds may be used during fiscal year 2022 to 2024. The Board of Ed operating budget, as approved by the Board of Finance, is again $106,624,199, an increase of 3.99% over the previous year. The budget increase was offset by the excess cost reimbursement of $2,241,772, as well as other grants and revenue of $1,788,803. More than 62% of the budget is for personnel expenses before benefits. A total of 491 teachers serve the Darien Public Schools. Clearly, the administrative and teaching staff is the town's greatest investment. The Education Committee questions this year centered on the recruitment and evaluation of teachers in the district to verify for the community that Darien is making the best effort to hire the best teachers and provide for stability among the teaching staff. In response to committee questions, the administration provided information on the models used for teacher recruitment, interviewing, hiring, supporting, mentoring, and evaluation. Several bullet points explain that more specifically what these relationships are and how the district works to recruit the best teachers. I'm not going to read all of them. The committee applauds the proposal for Darien to host a teacher in residence program Many members advocated for the hiring of 2 teachers for this program. In response to our questions, we learned that the teachers will have the full support of a master teacher who will provide real-time advice and feedback where necessary. Teachers will be recruited through the CREC or Capital Region Education Council and will have additional support of 2 teachers from neighboring districts who have hosted this program. Some committee members expressed interest in having the district make hiring a more diverse staff a greater priority. During the budget process, many members of the Education Committee advocated for restructuring of the elementary special ed administration to include the assistant principals rather than the facilitator positions in each of the elementary schools. This restructured model will be made possible at a reasonable cost of $146,586. Committee members suggested that the Board of Education retain both the co-teaching and the lab models to support Darien High School students, particularly this year. Finally, committee members expressed concern that the town would not be able to sustain a 4% increase every year and encouraged the administration to reflect on this. As we look at the strategic plan and other initiatives, the cost of running the district will be higher. Dr. Adley explained that while there are new initiatives each year, the strategic plan allows action plans to be proposed in a coherent manner. Priorities will be established and brought to the Board of Ed for analysis. Not all initiatives require additional funding. The Education Committee voted unanimously to approve the appropriation for the Board of Ed operating budget and asks that the RTM do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. Nice job. I now recognize the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis, Chair.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. Thank you, Ms. Santori and the Education Committee for a very thorough report on the Board of Education budget. It allows me to be quite short in this area. I wanted to remind everyone about the uniqueness of the Board of Ed operating budget. In the state of Connecticut, the Board of Ed are elected by the local citizenry, and their operating expenses by local taxes, but their authority comes from the state. As such, the Board of Finance and the RTM do not have line item veto as we do on the Board of Selectmen or Board of Ed Capital and the Board of Selectmen operating budget. We approve an aggregate amount for expenditures, and as such, the amount is final. In contrast, the line items reviewed are mere placeholders. The committee attended numerous Board of Ed meetings, held multiple discussions prior to the Board of Finance, and most of the main points have already been presented. The committee, in an earlier sense of the meeting, fully supported both the SES transition to elementary school assistant principals. Furthermore, the committee supported the 2 teachers in residence that will be enacted next year. This budget is higher than desired at 4.03%, and the 2-year compound annual growth is 3.2, which is more respectable. We had hoped for a better story explaining the percent increase that was told. However, on the whole, the committee supported several initiatives within the budget and the overall budget. The current year had special appropriations surrounding unanticipated COVID expenses. No COVID-related expenses were approved to be budgeted within the proposed budget. The committee is hopeful that should such expenses occur, the Board of Ed, as it did this year, return in the February timeframe, but only after looking at such COVID expenses first by what grants could cover it and what cost savings within the proposed budget, as was the case this year. We will support the Board of Ed. At our meeting at May 5th, 2021, the Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously to approve the education operating budget and recommend the same to the full RTM.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any other committees that wish to report on the Board of Budget?
see no hands raised.
Okay, any town officials?
We received, I don't believe we received any, anyone saying they wanted to speak. Cecil, can you verify that?
I have not seen anything in the questions on that.
Okay, members of the RTM?
I see no hands raised.
Are you ready to vote?
Okay, so this is 11C.
21-11C.
Okay. Polls launched. Okay, closing the poll. The motion carries.
Okay, I recognize Jack Davis to move the total appropriations in the general fund.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move Section D of RTM Resolution 20-21-11, authorizing and approving the appropriation of total appropriation in the general fund. Is there a second?
Michael Heights.
Resolved that the above appropriations totaling $152,724,330 are for the purpose of meeting the expenses of the town of Darien for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022, as shown by the budget this day approved. Section D is a mathematical addition of adding sections B and C to that total of $152,724,330. I am happy to say that our town officials are able to do that math, as is the Finance and Budget Committee. And on May 5th, the committee voted unanimously to approve said appropriations and recommends the same to the full RTM.
Is there anyone who wishes to report or speak on this? Ready to vote?
Okay, 21-11D.
Correct.
There you go. Okay, closing the poll, and the motion carries.
Motion carries. I recognize Jack Davis, Chair of Finance and Budget, to move item 21-11E as an echo, setting the mill rate.
Kate, can you put up the mill rate chart, please?
Give me a second.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, and Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move Section E of the RTM Resolution 21-11, authorizing and approving the mill rate. Do I have a second?
Bert von Stuppelnagel.
Thank you, Bert. Resolved that a tax of 16.84 mills is hereby levied upon the last complete grand list of the town. A total net assessment of $8,629,179,255 on the property as of October 1st, 2020, payable in 2 equal semi-annual installments. The first installment to become due and payable on July 1st, 2021, and the second installment to become due and payable on January 1st, 2022, provided, however, that 1, any taxpayer may pay both installments on July 1st, 2021. 2, the personal property tax on motor vehicles in said town shall become due and payable in one single installment on July 1st, 2021. And 3, any property tax in any amount not in excess of $100 shall become due and payable in a single installment on July 1st. This item sets the mill rate that is used for collecting taxes for the coming year. For those that divided the total appropriations by the grand list to recalculate the mill rate, by now you know that just does not work. The methodology is as follows. The grand list is reduced by abatements for veterans, volunteers, seniors, and other grants that represent state and local tax relief. This year, the amount was $39,392,996, an increase of $324,142 over the prior year. A collection rate is calculating using the last 5 completed years from fiscal year 16 through 20. This year, the Board of Finance reverted back to this formula. Last year, the Board of Finance chose to use a collection rate associated with the Great Recession, reducing the collection rate to 98.91. That resulted in the assumption that the town would collect over $700,000 less than originally calculated. The collection rate that I just mentioned that's calculated is reduced by 25 basis points to allow for changes to the grand list and or actual collection rate for fiscal year 22. This year, the collection rate is 99.445%, or 53.3 basis points higher than the Great Recession rate used last year. The mill rate is then calculated by dividing the amount needed to be raised through taxes by the adjusted grand list and multiplying the result by 1,000. Some additional comments are worthwhile for the mill rate this year. As previously discussed, without question, fiscal year 21 is an anomaly. As such, I've been discussing both year to year as well as compound annual growth rate comparing fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 22. Here are some aspects that should be considered. Whilst the amount required to be raised through taxes has increased by 4.42% from 21 to 22, the compound annual growth rate comparing fiscal year 20 to 22 is only 2.07%. The 2-year compound annual growth of the unadjusted grand list was 92 basis points, compared to the 70 basis point growth rate from 21 to 22. Due to using the prior year's collection rate versus the Great Recession rate, as well as the increase in the grand list, the adjusted grand list 2-year compound annual growth rate is 63 basis points versus a year-over-year growth rate of 1.26. By now, everyone is eagerly awaiting to hear the mill rate, if you have not already read ahead or listened to my opening. The rate is 15.84 mills, representing a 3.12 increase over last year's 16.33 mill rate. However, the two-year compound annual growth rate from fiscal year 20 to this current year's budget, fiscal year 22, is only 1.09%, a significant difference and a significant accomplishment for this town during difficult times. At our Cinco de Mayo meeting, with 14 of 17 members present, the F&B committee voted unanimously to approve the budgeted mill rate of 16.84 mills and recommend the same to the full RTM.
Thank you, Jack. Great. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this?
Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. I see no one set.
All right, are we ready to vote?
Okay, we are going to 2111E.
Correct.
Poll has been launched. Okay, closing the poll. The motion carries.
That's great. I recognize Jack again to move 21-11 F as in Frank.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move Section F of the RTM Resolution 21-11, authorizing and approving $5 million of borrowing. Is there a second?
Bert von Stupel-Nagel.
Thank you, Bert. If there's no objection, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. This authorization is part of each year's annual budget resolution. It authorizes the town to issue short-term tax anticipation borrowings up to $5 million without the need of RTM approval. This allows the town to fund the budget in the event there is a timing difference between tax collections and expenditures. Although the town has not needed to utilize this authority in recent history, it gives them the necessary flexibility. This amount was increased to $10 million for the current fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 as a safety net for the unknown as we entered fiscal year. Once again, the town did not need to issue tax anticipations. In addition, it will have over $6 million in unassigned fund balance in excess of the 12% guidance set by the Board of Finance to begin fiscal year 22. As such, it was decided to return the borrowings back to its previous level. The committee met on May 5th, 2021, when the committee voted 13 to approve and 1 abstention. The abstention is due to work limitations on all debt. I will have that abstention. I'm only mentioning the reason for the abstention this one time. And the committee recommends that the full RTM approve this motion.
Thank you, Jack. Are there others who wish to speak on this?
I see no hands raised.
Great. Then are we ready to vote?
11F coming your way. Okay, closing the poll, the motion passes.
Great. I recognize, Jack Davis, Chair of F&B, to, move 2111, G.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee. I move Section G of the RTM Resolution 2111, authorizing and approving the appropriations of transfer of funds. Is there a second?
I saw Terry Duffy.
Thank you, Terry. Resolved that the following appropriations for other funds are hereby made as detailed below for the 2021-2022 fiscal year as shown by the budget this day approved. Sewer Operations Funds, $4,165,666. Sewer Assessment Fund, $211,809. Sewer Capital Fund, $169,800. Parking Lot Administration Fund, $824,665. Parking Lot Capital Fund, $278,632. This item includes 5 different appropriations from different funds. All of the appropriations are self-funding, which means the fund that collects the revenue, uses fees or taxes, automatically feeds the expenses for the services which it provides. The sewer funds, excluding the sewer capital funds, reimburse the town for sewer-related town debt, which is part of the Board of Selectmen budget the RTM earlier approved, and totals $313,504 for fiscal year 22. The F&B committee met on May 5th, 2021 and voted unanimously to approve all the appropriations and fund transfers and recommend the same to the full RTM. This is the last section of 2111 budget resolution, although there are several more items to be covered to complete the fiscal year 2022 budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Are there any folks who want to comment on these items?
I see no hands raised.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
Okay, 2111G. Okay, closing the poll, and the motion carries.
Thank you. That's great. Next, we have 2112, right?
Yes.
Yep. Recognize Jack Davis to move 2112.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 21-12 appropriating $30 million to refund certain of the town's outstanding bonds and authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds or amounts available in unassigned fund balance to finance such appropriation. Is there a second?
Jim Cameron.
Thank you, Jim. If there's no objections, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. This resolution gives the Board of Finance the ability to issue up to $30 million to refinance certain of the town's existing bond obligations without having to come back before the RTM. The resolution specifically stipulates that in order to issue the bonds, the transaction must achieve present value debt service savings for the town. Section 2 of this resolution, the RTM amended previously to add unassigned fund balance to the issuance of refunding bonds as a method of refinance. We then used that in December of 2019 to do the bonds. Bonds issued by the town from 2012 through 2020 are covered by this resolution under the reference prior bonds in Section 1, with the total outstanding debt service as of June 30th, 2021 equal to $62 million. It is important to note that this resolution does not impact the requirement for the RTM to approve any new issuance of debt to fund new capital projects, and passage of this resolution rescinds, quote, any authorized but unissued portions of previous refunding authorizations as stated in Section 9. To summarize, this resolution assures that the Board of Finance can act quickly to realize any market savings opportunities. With this resolution pre-authorized such Board of Finance action up to $30 million. In addition, the resolution makes it clear that general fund monies may be used and that any present value future savings will be determined if and when an actual refunding opportunity is evaluated and occurs. At its regular meeting at May 5th, 2021, with 14 of 17 members present, the F&B committee voted 13 in favor, 1 abstention, approving this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jack. Are there any others who wish to speak on this?
I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay, then we're ready to vote, everybody? Okay, item 21-12.
And the poll is out. Okay, closing the poll, the motion carries.
Great. I recognize Jack Davis, Chair of F&B, to move item 21-13.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chairman of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 21-13, authorizing an appropriation of $762,000 to pay for the 2021 sidewalk repair and replacement project, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $762,000 to meet said appropriation. Do I have a second?
Elizabeth Lane.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Or Beth. If there's any, if there are no objections, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. This resolution was approved by the Board of Finance at their April 6th meeting for the funding of this sidewalk replacement initiative. Mark had a letter previously and had asked F&B to start including this, and a number of years ago we did at his request. The cost of the project is $750,000, and the bonding includes $12,000 of issuance costs. Estimated annual principal and interest payments for a 20-year bond approximates $46,000 per year, with the total interest expense approximating $203,000 over the life of the bond. The Board of Finance does expect this project, as well as the projects outlined in Resolutions 2114 and 2115, to be part of the larger issues. The RTM Public Works Committee will provide the greater detail on the sidewalks. The F&B Committee met on May 5th with 14 of 17 members present and voted 12 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstention to approve this resolution and recommend the same to the full RTM.
Thanks, Yak.
I'm not done. The individual that voted against this regulation felt that neither sidewalks nor potentially road paving should be bonded, as it should be paid in full annually as part of the ongoing capital maintenance of the town. Now, thank you.
Thanks, Yak.
I had to take a breath.
Excuse me there. I recognize Public Works Committee and Monica McNally, Chair.
Good evening. My name is Monica McNally, District 2, Chair of the Public Works Committee of the RTM, at a regular meeting of the Public Works Committee held on April 8th with 10 of 11 members present. The Public Works Committee considered and voted unanimously to recommend approval to the full RTM, the Public Works Capital Expenditures portion of the Board of Selectmen budget, which includes this appropriation. At the request of the Board of Selectmen, the Public Works Department has developed a 5-year plan, a 5-year comprehensive sidewalk plan. The total cost of the program is estimated to be $3.4 million. The budget request for this year is $750,000. That same amount is scheduled for the next 2 years, then will be reduced to $500,000 in 2024, 25, and to $150,000 in 25, 26. High traffic areas, commuting areas, and areas close to school were highlighted in the PIAC report and are a top focus. Repair work will also be done in the downtown area, including brick repair and tree removal and replacement. I can provide a brief update on the projects for 2021 and 2022. As you've probably noticed, Tokenique Road from Silver Lake to Rainbow Circle and Tokenique Road from Great Hill to Cliff Avenue are complete. On the work schedule for completion is Hollow Tree from West to Middlesex. That is why the cones are there presently. Tokenique Road from Silver Lake to I-95 is scheduled for this season, as is the Boston Post Road from Hampton to Saltbox, Boston Post Road from Birch to 381 Boston Post Road, and Leroy from West to Kona Road. Putting in new sidewalks requires property owners agreeing to take on the responsibility for clearing them when it snows, along with other considerations such as ADA ramps, acquiring easements, and possible tree removal. There are new sidewalks on the working list at various stages in the process. This includes Edgerton from West Elm to West Avenue. We're waiting on a public hearing for that. There's a meeting with the Department of Transportation concerning the Mansfield Avenue from Overbrook to Mansfield, and the West Avenue from Norotan to Fairfield is waiting on the Lot Zip project. So this will be a very busy construction season for sidewalks. Work has already begun and it will go through October. The Public Works Committee appreciates the consistent high quality work and level of service that the Public Works Department provides, and we ask you to vote yes and ratify this item 21-13. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Are there any others who wish to speak on this?
Mac Patrick.
Okay, Mac?
Yes, hi, I'm Mac Patrick, Chairman of Public Health and Safety. At our same May 5th meeting, we voted unanimously to support the sidewalk renovation, the $762,000 appropriation. That's 2113. And just for clarity and saving time, we did vote the same way for 2114 and 2115. So just want to let you know. Thank you.
You want to speak on each of those, or? Okay, ready to vote? And did we get everybody's, anyone else like to speak on this one? 2113?
Not seeing any other hands raised.
Okay, we ready to vote?
Okay. Poll is launched. Okay, closing the poll. The motion carries.
Great, I recognize Jack Davis, Chair of F&B, to move item 21-14.
Here, I'm Jack Davis, District 3 Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 2114, authorizing an appropriation of $863,000 for the Royal Elementary School roof replacement project, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $863,000 to meet said appropriation. Do I have a second?
What, Michael Cortez.
Thank you, Michael. If there's no objections, I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. This resolution was approved by the Board of Finance at their April 6th meeting for the funding of this Royal School roof replacement initiative. The cost of the project is $850,000, and the bonding includes $13,000 of issuance costs. Estimated annual principal and interest payments for a 20-year bond approximates $51,000 per year, with the total interest approximating $227,000 over the life of the bond. The Board of Finance does expect this project, as well as the projects outlined in Resolution 2113 and 2115, to be part of a larger issuance. The RTM Education Committee will provide the greater detail on this project, but simply put, the school needs a new roof. The F&B Committee met on May 5th with 14 of 17 members present and voted 13 in favor and 1 abstention to approve this resolution and recommend the same to the full idea.
Thanks, Jack. I recognize Clara Sartori, Chair of the Education Committee.
Thank you, Seth and Jack. I'm Clara Sartori. I represent the RTM Education Committee as chairman, and I'm from District 2. The RTM Education Committee met on Monday, May 3rd, with 16 of 16 members present. David Deneen, Chair of the Board of Ed, Alan Adley, Superintendent of Schools, Marge Dion, Director of Human Resources, Rich Rudel, Director of Finance, and Mike Lynch, Director of Facilities, and Shirley Klein, Director of Special Ed, and members of the Board of Ed attended the meeting. We looked at both of resolutions 2114 and 2115 regarding the roof at Royal. The roof that's scheduled to be replaced includes parts of the 1996 edition and the original building, which was built in the 30s and 40s. The roof is near the end of its life. There have been several leaks in places, as reported by Mike Lynch. The remainder of the roof is on the first grade wing in the library. In this section, Mr. Lynch feels has a few more years left in it, and the plan does not call for replacement of it at this time. The committee voted 15 of 16 in favor of the appropriations for this capital project, with one abstention. The reason for the abstention was that a member wanted better understanding of the timing and coordination with the extensive renovation projects proposed at the 3 elementary schools. Duke Denay, Board of Ed Chair, commented that the plans for upkeep and renovation of the schools have been characterized by thoughtful coordination to ensure that capital projects tie in with the proposed facilities renovations planned for the next several years. So we asked the RTM to support this resolution, as did the Education Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Clara. Are there any others who wish to speak on this item?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
Okay, this is 2114. Poll is launched. Okay, closing the poll and the motion carries.
Wonderful. I recognize Jack Davis, Chair of F&B, to move item 21-15, consideration and action on the appropriation of $305,000 for the homeschool HVAC system.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chairman of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move RTM Resolution 21-14, authorizing an appropriation of $305,000 for the homeschool elementary HVAC system project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $305,000 to meet said appropriation.
21.
Do I have a second?
You do, Lisa Yarnell.
Thank you, Lisa. There's no objection. I propose to waive the reading of the resolution. This resolution was approved by the Board of Finance at their April 6th meeting for the funding of the homeschool HVAC replacement initiative. This portion is the design, and the implementation will be much greater and come at a later date. We will need to approve this bonding now, and so that it can be rolled into the next implementation. And we can expect this bonding resolution to be amended to include that cost for implementation at a later date. The cost of the project is $300,000, and the bonding includes $5,000 of issuance costs, estimated annual principal and interest payments for the 20-year bond appropriation is $18,000, with a total interest cost approximating $80,000 over the life of the bond. Once again, the Board of Finance does expect this project, as well as the projects outlined in Resolution 21-13 and 21-14, to be part of a larger issuance and potentially added to or rolled into a future homeschool initiative. The RTM Education Committee will provide greater detail on this project. The F&B Committee met on May 5th with 14 of 17 members present and voted 13 in favor, none against, and 1 abstention to approve this resolution and recommend the same to the full RTM. And I get the next resolution Snyder. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. 6 deep breaths, oxygen's on the way. I recognize the Education Committee, Clara Sartori, Chair.
Hi, I'm Clara Sartori, Chair of the Education Committee and a member of District 2. Again, the RTM Education Committee met on Monday, May 3rd with 16 of 16 members present. The same people from the Board of Ed, Mr. Deneen, Dr. Adley, and most importantly, Mike Lynch, the Director of Facilities, were on hand to answer our questions and provide a little background information. Mike Lynch explained that a study done as part of the 5-year plan in 2016 recommended extensive work to the HVAC at 3 of the older elementary schools. The home's heating system, containing original parts from the 1930s, will involve the most work because of the age of the building and the heating system. The design can be incorporated into future renovation plans for the school. Again, the committee voted 15 of 16 people in favor of the appropriation, with 1 abstention. The reason, again, for the abstention was that the member wanted a better understanding of the timing and coordination with the extensive renovation projects proposed in the 3 elementary schools. Again, Mr. Deneen commented that plans have been characterized by thoughtful coordination to ensure that the capital projects tie in with proposed facilities renovations planned for the next several years. We ask that the RTM join us in approving this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. Are there any others who wish to speak?
I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay, we're ready to vote. Let's vote.
Okay, 2115,
115.
and the poll is launched. Okay, closing the poll, the motion passes.
Oh, that's great. So I recognize Clara Sartori, Chairman of the Education Committee, to move item 2116, easement to Connecticut Light and Power.
Clara Sartori, Chair of the Education Committee and a member of District 2. Let's see, we are looking at the Oxridge Eversource easement, which is 21-16. I would like to move the resolution and ask that I can waive the reading of it. Is there a second for the resolution?
Waddy Plot.
Great, thank you, Waddy. Okay, again, the RTM Education Committee met on Monday, May 3rd, with 16 of 16 members present. David Deneen of the Board of Ed, Dr. Alan Adley, Superintendent of Schools, Marge Sion, Human Resources, Rich Rudel, Director of Finance, Mike Lynch, Director of Facilities, and Shirley Klein, Director of Special Ed, and members of the Darien Board of Education attended the meeting. On Monday afternoon, prior to the meeting, Kip Coons, co-chair of the Oxridge Building Committee, provided background information, including pictures on the Eversource easement via email. The Education Committee voted unanimously to support what is called Option 1, involving setting a pole on the east side of Mansfield Avenue, requiring an easement to trench across Mansfield Avenue and down the access road to Oxridge over a path from the entrance driveway to the new transformer that will be near the school. The easement involves property owned by the town. The committee recommends that the RTM support the resolution for the following reasons. 1, an upgrade to the power system will extend power to the new building, which will be used during construction. Option 1 was recommended by O&G Construction, the engineers, and the architects. There will be minimal disruption of electrical service to the school. The project will be done when students are not on campus. Option 1 is the most cost-effective. Town Attorney Wayne Fox and Planning and Zoning Director Jeremy Ginsburg reviewed the easement documents. Finally, a suggestion was made by one member that in the future, the background information should be distributed earlier to give the committee a better chance to analyze the information before voting on the item. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Clara. Does anyone else wish to speak on this item?
I don't see any hands.
All right, we're ready to vote. Let's proceed.
Okay. And the poll's out there. Okay, closing the poll, the motion carries.
Great. I recognize Public Works Committee, Monica McNally, Chair, for item 21-17.
Good evening. My name is Monica McNally, District 2, Chair of Public Works Committee. At this time, I would like to move item 21-17, approving the contract between the Town of Darien and the Darien Public Works Employees Union effective July 1, 2020 and expiring July 30th, 2023. Without objection, I move to waive the reading of the resolution. I'm sorry, do I have a motion? I'm sorry.
Second.
You do, Terry Duffy.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Terry. At a special meeting of the Public Works Committee held on May 6, 2021, with 10 of 11 members present, the Public Works Committee considered and voted unanimously to recommend approval of this contract to the full RTM. At that meeting, Kate Bush presented detailed information on the Public Works Employees Union contract to the committee. The negotiated contract was approved by employees on April 23rd, 2021. The RTM has 30 days to reject the contract. If it does not in 30 days, the contract is approved as is. The contract covers 22 public works employees, 6 park and rec employees, 3 sewer department employees, and 1 parking employee, for a total of 33. The contract calls for a step up in wages, 2.25% for 2020, 2.25% for 2021, and 2.5% in 2022. This contract is consistent with contracts negotiated across the state. Sorry, it's getting late. There are currently 50% of the employees at the top step, and at the end of the contract, there will be 80% there if there are no personnel changes. Employees will be contributing 10% to medical premium costs in 2021, 10.5% in 2022, and 11% in 2023. A significant change in this contract is to the retirement plan. Employees of this bargaining unit that are hired after the date of the signing will be enrolled in a defined contribution pension plan rather than the existing defined benefit plan. The terms agreed to are a required employee contribution of 5%, a match of an employer contribution of 5%, and a 5-year cliff vesting. This is expected to provide savings to the town over the long run.
The town currently pays into the current defined benefit plan an average of 8 to 10% of employee compensation, as compared to 5% for this plan for new hires. Full savings will take some time to be realized, as the majority of the union will still be covered by the existing defined benefit plan for some time. Various language changes were made to adjust benefits or clarify benefits, such as employee advancement, tuition reimbursement, personal days, union fees, and employee evaluations, none of which are expected to have a material economic or social impact. As part of the negotiations, the parties discussed new language concerning service ratings. The parties did not reach consensus during the negotiations, but agreed to have representatives from the union and management meet and participate in impact negotiations on this issue within 8 weeks of the RTM approval of the agreement. There are several other language changes that the town proposed and the union accepted that are classified as corrections or cleanup of miscellaneous contract language and not substantive changes. Public Works Committee acknowledges the high quality and expanding scope of work the Department of Public Works employees provide the town. In summary, the Public Works Committee views this as a fair contract and voted unanimously, 10 in favor, no abstentions, to approve the resolution 2117 and recommend the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Nice job, Monica. Thank you. I recognize Park and Recreation Committee, Adele Coniff, Chair.
Del Coniff, District 3, RTM Parks and Recreation Committee Chairman. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee met on May 6, 2021, with 13 of 15 members present, constituting a quorum, to discuss and vote on the Public Work Employees Union Contract. The Park and Rec Committee found the contract to be fair and advantageous to both the town of Darien and employees. Wages increase for employees, and the town of Darien begins a defined contribution pension plan for new hires, as well as receiving an incremental increase in employee medical premium cost sharing. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee voted 12 in favor to not reject the contract with 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele. I recognize Jack Davis, Chairman of Finance and Budget Committee.
I'm still Jack Davis. This is the last report of the night. Thank you all for your patience and participation. First, let me say F&B agrees with the wonderful reports we just heard from Monica McNally, Chair of the RTM Public Works, and Adele Coniff, Chair of the RTM Park and Rec Committees. I will not repeat anything that has already been covered. As this is the last report, I'd like to thank Kate Bush, Jen Chinesky, Rich Rudel, Dr. Adley, the chair of the various boards, for their participation with F&B this year. I'd also like to thank Jay-Z for what has been a very productive working relationship. I'd also like to thank the F&B team members for your work on this budget season. Please stand up, take a bow, and be recognized. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee met on May 5th, 2021 and voted unanimously to not reject this contract and recommend the same for the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any others who wish to speak on this?
You have a couple. We have Virginia Giancamano.
Virginia.
Virginia, you need to unmute yourself. Okay, she's put her hand down.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this point.
All right, are we ready to vote then? And let's proceed.
And the poll's out.
while we're doing this, I just want to thank all these committee chairs. You can see that these committees are involved up to their elbows in this process. And because of that, the town of Darien, I think, gets value for its annual budget. So I want to thank all of them for their participation here tonight. And I hope those of you listening, have let's say, a clear picture of where our monies are going to be spent in the coming year. I also want to thank some folks, the Rules Committee, in helping us put this together. And Monica McNally is the vice chair, and she helps with these meetings, monitoring what's going on in them so we can adjust and keep things moving. And Lois Schneider, whose technology committee, which is part of Rules, does a lot of work in the systems, making sure that these systems all kind of roll along. And she does that obviously with Kate. Without Kate, I think we would be stumbling around. So many thanks to you, Kate, for all of this.
You're welcome. And the resolution passes.
That's terrific. Thank you all for your participation here tonight. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I see that from Jack Davis.
Rightfully so. And second, please.
I saw one from Adele Connor.
All in favor? Please vote.
Ooh. I'm sorry, I hit the close too quickly. If you're opposed, raise your hand. I think your motion carries, Seth.
Wonderful. Good night, everybody. Sleep tight. Stay well. We'll see you in June.